They say sound dies underground. Yet in Vietnam there was a place where the silence was louder than gunfire. A place where footsteps left no echoes, where whispers carried farther than shouts, and where American soldiers reported hearing voices that weren't there, sometimes their own, speaking back to them. How can a tunnel swallow sound but amplify fear? And how can something buried be more alive than the men who entered it? This is the paradox at the heart of Project Black Echo, the Vietnam War tunnel network the United States denies ever breaching. Officially, no American unit ever descended into the lower tier. Unofficially, the few who went in were never the same. Our story begins with Staff Sergeant Daniel Riker, a 29-year-old tunnel rat from the 25th Infantry Division, a man small enough to fit through the earth's veins and stubborn enough to refuse fear a seat at his table. But even he would describe Black Echo as a place designed by something that understood people better than people understand themselves. But how did he end up down there? Why was his team never logged in official records? And what did he bring out that terrified his own commanders? Let's step back. A few weeks earlier, in 1967, U.S. forces had mapped hundreds of Viet Cong tunnel systems, nests of twisting corridors, trapdoors, dead drops, and ambush chambers. But in one section of the Iron Triangle, intelligence analysts detected anomalies. Heat signatures too steady for human presence, rhythmic tremors without seismic source, and a void beneath the known tunnels, perfectly symmetrical. An underground box 50 meters below, that shouldn't exist. Commanders dismissed it as noise. Sensors malfunctioned all the time, but the tremors kept returning, every 41 hours, down to the second. Almost like a heartbeat. Why would a tunnel have a heartbeat? Riker entered the story when a patrol stumbled upon an entrance disguised beneath rotted bamboo. The opening wasn't Viet Cong architecture. Its shape was too smooth, its drop too vertical, its walls coated with a strange dust that smelled like burnt stone. When the squad leader shined a flashlight down, the beam didn't just fade, it bent. Light shouldn't bend inside a hole, right? And yet it did. That's when the brass stepped in. A classified detachment arrived wearing no unit patches. Their commander, a man Riker only knew as Major Cross, asked a single question. Who here isn't afraid of the dark? No one spoke. Then Riker raised his hand. Good, Cross said. You'll need that. What kind of darkness needs courage as a prerequisite? Before descending, Riker noticed something odd. The detachment ignored the upper tunnel entirely. No maps, no recon, no marking traps. They walked past all of it like tourists ignoring a gift shop to reach the museum's forbidden wing. They cared only about the black shaft. That shaft descended 60 feet, almost straight down. Too perfect to be natural. Too clean to be VC made. Riker felt the air grow colder as he went. Each rung vibrated faintly, like the metal was listening. At the bottom, his boot sank into dust, finer than ash. His flashlight revealed no walls, only darkness that seemed to retract from the light, like something alive, trying to avoid being seen. Then he heard it, a low, droning hum, not mechanical, not electrical, human. Voices layered together, whispering words he couldn't understand. But one voice, stood out. It sounded like his mother. Impossible. She was thousands of miles away in Kansas. Riker froze. Cross, standing behind him, placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't answer it, the Major warned. Nothing here knows your voice unless you give it to them. How can something in a tunnel know you? The black echo chamber revealed itself slowly. When the team stepped forward, their footsteps produced no sound, not even the crunch of dust. Their breathing didn't echo. Their gear didn't clink. It was as if the tunnel absorbed every sound and drank it whole. Riker whispered, "How deep does this go?" The Major didn't look back. "Depends on how much you believe." Cryptic answers were not unusual for Cross, but this one felt like a warning aimed at the tunnel itself. 10 minutes in, they reached the first anomaly. A smooth wall carved into a perfect arc, as if shaped by machinery decades ahead of its time. Embedded in the arc were symbols, circles within circles, intersecting lines, shapes like primitive maps. Riker touched one. It pulsed warm. "Do not touch anything," Cross said sharply. "We still don't know what triggers it." "Triggers what?" Riker's breath caught as the symbols began to glow. Soft blue, like moonlight trapped inside stone. The glow illuminated a larger space ahead, a chamber with no pillars, no beams, no supports, yet the ceiling hovered effortlessly above them like an inverted bowl. Then came the tremor. Not from the walls, not from the floor, from below. Something beneath the chamber. Waking up. "What is that?" Riker whispered. Cross answered with a grim certainty. "That is why we're here." And then a metallic click echoed behind them. But nothing was supposed to echo down here. How do you open a door that shouldn't exist, yet somehow opens from the inside? That was the question that ruined Sergeant Hale's sleep for the rest of his life. Because deep inside the Vietnamese jungle, under a mess of roots, stale humidity, and mud that swallowed footprints like hungry mouths, Hale found something impossible. A sealed iron hatch, perfectly cut, perfectly cold, sitting in a tunnel system supposedly built with wartime tools and bare hands. A door with no hinges, a door with no locks, a door that should have been a myth, but a door that was already unlocked. And what waited behind it was the first sign that the American military had lied about more than just an operation. They lied about what they found down there. But before we open Hale's impossible door, let me ask you something. If you discovered a place the government swore didn't exist, would you open it? Or walk away and pretend you never saw it? The tunnel that moved like a living thing. When Hale and his tunnel rat team, Martinez, Crowley, and Ruthers, dropped into the shaft, they expected the usual cramped passages, bamboo traps, and the distant hum of enemy whispers. But Black Echo's tunnels didn't behave like tunnels. They felt alive. Martinez was the first to notice. "Sir, does this place feel like it's breathing to you?" Hale almost laughed. Until he saw it, too. The tunnel walls expanded and contracted ever so slightly, as if adjusting to their presence. And every time they took a step forward, the temperature dropped a fraction of a degree. 4 steps. Cold. 6 more steps. Colder. Another few steps. Freezing. "Like walking into the throat of a dead animal," Crowley muttered, waving his flashlight, its beam trembling over the soil. And here's the strange part. These tunnels shouldn't have been cold. Every account of Viet Cong tunnel systems described unbearable heat and stale, suffocating air. Black Echo was the opposite. Chilled, oxygen-rich, eerily preserved. Does that sound natural to you? Because Hale's squad knew something was off before they even reached the door. What would you do If every step forward felt like the ground itself was warning you to turn back, the man who shouldn't have been there. Before they reached the hatch, before any of them saw the impossible metal surface, Hale caught something in the corner of his eye. A shadow. A small figure disappearing around a bend. Martinez. Confirm visual. Did you see that? Sir. I thought it was just you. But it wasn't Hale. And it wasn't any of them. Crowley whispered, "There's someone ahead of us." But here's the twist. Black Echo was reported abandoned. No heat signatures, no enemy presence, no movement detected. Yet someone was walking ahead of them. Someone small, someone barefoot, someone who moved without sound. And as they pushed deeper, the prints became clearer. Tiny footprints, as if a child had been running in circles. But why would a child be inside a military tunnel built for war? Do you feel that question settling in your spine yet? Because Hale did. The door that made no sense. They finally reached it. A solid metallic hatch, curved like submarine plating, untouched by rust. Ruthers tapped it with a knuckle and nearly jumped when the sound echoed through the chamber like a bell underwater. This wasn't Viet Cong engineering. This wasn't American engineering either. This wasn't from any war zone. "What the hell is this doing here?" Ruthers whispered. Hale didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. There was nothing in his training, nothing in the field manuals, nothing in military briefings that explained a pressure-sealed hatch inside a jungle tunnel dug in the 1960s. And then came the worst part. Martinez found scrape marks along the ground, thin, desperate claw trails leading away from the door, as if someone inside had tried to stop it from opening. Someone opened the door from the other side. But no one came out. Let that image sit with you for a moment. A door built by no known army. Opened by no known person. In a tunnel no one should have survived long enough to build. The footsteps behind them. Hale leaned in, fingers brushing the metal, when a faint sound echoed behind the team. Soft, slow, careful footsteps. But not human footsteps. Light, almost floating, almost gliding. The team turned at once, flashlights slicing through the cold air. And they saw nothing. Nothing except freshly disturbed dust, as if something invisible had moved past them and was now standing just beyond the reach of their lights. "Sir," Crowley whispered, voice cracking. "We're not alone in here." For the first time since entering Vietnam, Sergeant Hale felt a fear he could not command away. Fear of something not enemy, not animal, not human. Something that didn't belong to any war. Something that shouldn't exist, yet moved freely through the tunnels. Hale placed his hand on the cold metal hatch. And on the other side, something placed a hand back. Not pushing, not clawing, just resting, as if waiting, as if listening, as if knowing they had finally arrived. And when the hatch began to turn, from the inside, the squad realized Black Echo wasn't hiding soldiers. It was hiding something that had been waiting for them. How do you hear an echo? Before you make a sound. That was the first thing that broke Hale's understanding of the world when he touched the hatch in Black Echo. because the moment his fingers brushed the metal, a whisper echoed from the other side. Not after he touched it, but before. Think about that for a second. How can something respond to a moment that hasn't happened yet? How can an echo come first? That paradox alone rewrote the rules of their mission. Because echoes are supposed to follow sound, responses follow actions, cause follows effect. But deep inside the impossible tunnels of Project Black Echo, the rules of time didn't apply the way they should. Something in the dark reacted before the team even moved, before they even spoke. Tell me, if a place answers your questions before you ask them, do you keep going? Or do you run? The hatch that opened itself, the metal hatch turned a fraction. Once, twice, slow, smooth, deliberate. "Back away," Hale whispered, but his voice barely carried. The cold air swallowed it as if the tunnel was tired of noise. Crowley shouldered his rifle. "Sir, whatever's in there, wait." Hale cut him off, because the turning stopped, just short of opening, as if whoever was inside was waiting for permission, not forcing their way out, not escaping, waiting. A strange kind of respect, or maybe curiosity, the kind predators show before deciding if you're worth the effort. Ruthers swallowed. "Sir, why did it stop?" Hale didn't answer, because that wasn't the real question. The real question was whispering in all their heads. What kind of enemy knocks, and then waits for you to let it out? Would you open that door, or freeze like Hale did, hoping it lost interest? The girl in the white dirt. Before Hale could decide, a faint scratching echoed behind them. Crowley spun around, flashlight trembling, and froze. A figure stood at the far end of the tunnel, small, barefoot, thin as a shadow, feet dusted in pale white soil that didn't match the tunnel walls. A girl, maybe 8 years old, eyes dark, reflective, unblinking. She didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. "Hands up!" Crowley shouted. The girl tilted her head, like someone trying to understand a language she'd never heard. Martinez whispered, "Sir, she wasn't on the thermal scans." No heat signature, no body warmth. Yet she was standing right in front of them. The girl took one step forward. The temperature dropped immediately. A cold punch across all 4 soldiers, like someone had opened a freezer inside their lungs. Tell me, what would you do if a child appeared where no child should be? Would you trust innocence, or fear the impossibility? The symbol in the dark. The girl lifted her hand and pointed, not at the team, not at the hatch, but at a section of tunnel wall, a patch of mud they hadn't paid attention to, a patch that didn't quite match the rest. Ruthers stepped forward cautiously and brushed it with his glove, revealing a carved symbol beneath the mud. A spiral with 4 branching lines like veins twisting around a central point. Crowley whispered, That isn't Vietnamese." No one recognized it. Not Hale. Not the translators later. Not the historians who pretended the mission never existed. It wasn't a war symbol. It wasn't ancient. It wasn't modern. It was something else. Something that didn't belong to any timeline they understood. The girl touched the same symbol on her own wrist, faintly glowing with the same spiral shape. Martinez staggered back. "Sir, What the hell does that mean? Hale didn't know, but the girl had just told them something the military never would. The tunnels were not built by the Viet Cong. They were simply the first ones who found them. The sound that came from inside them. Before Hale could speak, the hatch behind him thudded. One deep, heavy impact, as if something inside grew impatient. But here's the disturbing part. The sound didn't echo from the metal. It echoed from inside the soldiers' skulls, like the noise wasn't happening in front of them, but inside them. A low vibration, a deep resonance, a knocking that felt like it was searching for a way out of their bones. Crowley dropped to one knee, gripping his head. "Sir, it's in my ears." "No," Hale whispered, trembling. "It's under us." Because the floor vibrated next, just once. A pulse. Like a heartbeat. "Tell me something honestly. If the ground beneath you pulsed like a living creature, would you stay standing? Or would you crawl out on your hands and knees until sunlight returned?" The girl's warning. The girl stepped closer. Only now her feet made no sound at all, as if she wasn't touching the ground. She reached toward Hale with a slow, trembling hand. Not threatening, not aggressive. Sad. Deeply, impossibly sad. Her voice finally came, soft, hollow, layered like three people whispering at once. "Do not open it." The tunnel shuddered again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Something under the earth exhaled. The hatch turned one final notch. And with the girl's impossible whisper still ringing in their ears, the squad watched as the hatch unlocked completely. Not pushed outward, not pulled inward. It simply vanished, as if swallowed by the metal. And on the other side, something waited in the dark. Something that had been listening to them long before they arrived. Something that had learned their voices. Something that now whispered Hale's name. How can something remember you before you meet it? That is the final paradox of Project Black Echo, the one that makes every other mystery seem small. Because when that impossible hatch dissolved into the wall, when the cold breath of the chamber swept across Hale's squad like a tide rolling in from nowhere, something in the darkness whispered Hale's full name. Not shouted, not moaned, not echoed, spoken, correctly, softly, familiarly. But here's the impossibility. Nothing inside Black Echo had ever met Hale. Nothing had ever seen him. Nothing had ever heard him. So, how did it know him? How did it recognize him? How did it speak a memory that had never happened? And if something underground already knew you, what does that say about how long it has been waiting? Before Hale could fire a single bullet, he realized the truth. Whatever lived inside this tunnel didn't want to escape. It wanted to meet them. And it had been preparing. The chamber of quiet breathing. The squad stepped into the chamber. Instantly the temperature plummeted, but not the kind of cold you feel on your skin. This cold went straight to the bone. The room was the size of a small church, carved with unnatural precision. Not one tool mark, not one rough edge. The walls curved perfectly, meeting at a dome that shimmered like quartz under the beam of Hale's flashlight. Martinez whispered, "Sir, this wasn't dug. This was molded." The air pulsed in slow rhythmic waves, like breath circulating through the stone. "Feels like standing inside a lung," Crowley muttered. And he wasn't wrong. Every few seconds the chamber contracted ever so slightly. like the earth itself inhaled and exhaled. Have you ever been in a place so quiet it felt loud? Where silence presses on your ears until you're certain you're hearing things that aren't there? That was this chamber. And then the girl stepped silently beside Hale, though no one had seen her enter, and pointed to the far end of the room, toward the shape. The shape that should not move. Nobody saw it at first, because the shape didn't stand out. It blended into the stone like a lump or shadow, until it shifted. Just once. A subtle movement, like a muscle twitching under skin. Ruthers gagged. Is that alive? The shape slowly uncurled. A mass of pale, stone-like flesh, smooth and veined with faint lines of glowing spirals. The same symbol carved into the tunnel wall. And the same symbol on the girl's wrist. Crowley stepped back. Sir, that's not. The shape rose on limbs that didn't bend the way limbs should. Tall, silent, balanced like a predator, but slow like something ancient. And worse, its surface reflected the soldiers' faces like a warped mirror, as if it learned by imitation. The girl whispered, "It listens, it learns, it remembers." Remember what, exactly? Things it hears, things it touches, or things it predicts, because the creature's featureless head tilted toward Hale, and the air vibrated as it spoke in Hale's exact voice. Sergeant Daniel Hale, tell me, what would you do if something underground spoke with your voice? Would you fire? Freeze? Or pray the darkness swallowed you before the thing did, the memory that wasn't theirs? The creature reached a hand, if you could call it that, toward the girl. She flinched. Hale saw fear for the first time in her eyes. The chamber walls vibrated, and suddenly visions flashed across the stone like projected memories. Children walking into the tunnels, children touching the spiraled symbols, children disappearing, not dying, not decaying, just absorbed into the walls like water into sand. Martinez fell to his knees. This isn't natural. This is something else. The girl turned to Hale, trembling. It learns from us. It keeps us. It becomes us. Hale's heart froze. It took you? She nodded. I died above. I live here now. The soldiers stared, realizing the impossible. The girl wasn't alive. She wasn't dead. She was remembered, held inside the tunnel system like a recording carved into reality. Project Black Echo wasn't a bunker, it was a memory vault, storing whatever entered it. And something inside it had started learning too fast. The thing that copied Hale. The creature took another step. The chamber trembled. The spiral veins along its body glowed brighter. And then its surface shifted, molding itself into the vague likeness of Hale's silhouette. Not perfect, not complete, but unmistakable. Ruthers whispered, Sir, it's copying you. But here's the disturbing part. It wasn't copying his body. It was copying his intent, his stance, his fear, his thoughts. It moved before Hale moved. It reacted before Hale reacted. The same paradox from the hatch, the same impossible echo, but now attached to something alive. Tell me, how do you fight something that learns your decisions before you make them? The creature lifted its hand, Hale's hand, and pointed back toward the tunnel they'd come from. And in Hale's voice, but older, deeper, worn by years that hadn't happened yet, it whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." The tunnel behind them sealed shut, and the chamber took a slow, deep breath. The chamber that closed too soon. When the tunnel sealed itself behind Hale's squad, the creature stepped closer, copying Hale's stance with unnerving accuracy. But it didn't attack. It simply whispered, "Remember what we forget." The girl tugged Hale's sleeve, voice trembling. "You must leave before it keeps you." Before Hale could respond, the chamber shuddered violently. Cracks raced across the walls. Dust fell like gray snow. The creature reached out, not to stop them, but to push them toward the collapsing passage. As if it wanted them to escape, as if the real danger wasn't the creature, but something deeper still. And then, like a pulse, everything went white. The surface lie. Hale woke up on the jungle floor. Sunlight, heat, silence. The others lay beside him, unconscious but alive. The tunnel entrance behind them. Gone. Not collapsed. Just gone. Replaced by untouched earth. Martinez whispered, "Sir, did any of that happen?" Hale didn't answer, because etched on his wrist was a faint spiral, the same symbol the girl wore, and it glowed just once before fading. The official military report. The operation was sealed immediately. All recordings scrubbed, all reports shredded, all 4 soldiers ordered never to speak again. The Pentagon's final statement read, "No breach occurred, no tunnels found, mission aborted due to heat stroke hallucinations. Case closed, war unchanged, history intact, at least on paper." But Hale knew the truth. Something underground had seen them, had learned them, had remembered them. And somewhere out there, something else remembered first. This was Project Black Echo, the mission the US denies, the tunnel network that shouldn't exist, and the memory the Earth refused to bury. You've been watching the war that never was, and in this war, it's the forgotten stories that are the most dangerous.